how do you connect the two, building capabilities and also building a culture?
I keep going back to the famous Rajiv Gandhi quote in the context of corruption in India. गांव में सिर्फ 15 पैसा पहुंचता है. A bit like that in the case of culture. If it is not consciously anchored, you only have 15 paisa reaching the far-flung branches and stations. And therefore, I keep going back to culture. How do I ensure that every new employee who comes into the organization understands how we work very well? And that answer keeps going back to culture.
Companies are not training colleges, right? They have a business to run and they have outcomes to achieve. So what is the outcome that we want, right? And that's very important.
Hello and welcome to the CHRO Playbook powered by enParadigm. I am Prajjal Saha. This is a series where we go beyond the buzzwords to understand how India's leading CHROs are building capabilities that translate into real business performance. Not just what organizations plan to do, but what they are actually doing, how they make it stick, and how they measure impact. Joining me today are Shailesh Singh, Chief People Officer at Axis Max Life Insurance, and John Cherian, founder and CEO of enParadigm. Shailesh, Axis Max Life operates in one of India's most competitive insurance markets. Let me start with this. When you think about building future-ready capabilities for the organization, what does that actually mean in business terms?
For us, right now, if I think of business capabilities from a context perspective, I think what becomes most pertinent is growth. And therefore, capabilities that position us well for growth in times to come, I think are going to be very important. We have just crossed that inflection point. By the way, in the life insurance sector, we are right now the fastest growing insurer. And therefore, capabilities that propel us to continue, sustain that momentum, I think would be the most important. And when we embark on some of those initiatives, some of those actions, it is with that lens that we primarily look at it. Number one. Number two, I'll mention two lenses that we use to your question. The second lens is we have created a name for ourselves in terms of our culture, particularly culture. And as a brand, we have been a great place to work certified company for over a decade. We have been the laureate category, and we are positioned very well from that perspective. We are known for our talent and culture, and that's the other lens that we always keep in mind as to how do we ensure that that factory of talent continues to churn and create more talent and bench strength for the organization to achieve the growth that it is set out for.
John, you have been working with organizations across sectors. Across the companies you interact with, what separates organizations that identify the right capabilities early from those that realize the need much later?
I think that's a great question because in the whole scheme of things, learning comes quite late in the talent maturity landscape, right? So you always look at more hygiene issues and existential issues before you come to what is required to build the organization to the next level, right? So that maturity is important. Obviously, when in our experience we have seen that when business is stable, the organization is growth oriented, when the organization is future oriented, and there is some clarity of vision and growth, right? And there's an articulated vision. All of these are more positive precursors to having a very solid learning landscape for the organization.
Okay, uh, great. Now, next question is, every organization says capability building is important, but resources are always limited. What are the two, three capabilities Axis Max Life has made a deliberate bet on right now, and what made those stand out?
I mean, you hit the nail on its head when you said resources are always a challenge and we're always competing for resources. And especially for a growing organization, it is all the more acute, and therefore prioritization becomes very important. There are two or three, let me call out two primarily that I think are extremely important for us. First and foremost, over the last few years, customer obsession, and I'm particularly using the word customer obsession, it's an organization value for us, has been extremely important and prime. We have all focused across functions, and our claims paid ratio, I'm using that as an example. Um, Claims paid ratio is the amount, a percentage of claims that a company settles. It's been above 99% now for many years, and we are amongst the highest, in the sector on this. Now, customer obsession and therefore the desire to continually create customer value in a very competitive LI sector, life insurance sector, I think is extremely important, and we have focused on that. To give you an example, I'll call out one particular project. It's called Project Vishwas. And then, by the way, this Project Vishwas won the gold recognition at the Brandon Hall HCM Excellence Awards last year, 2025. But for us, it was not really a project, it was a movement. And that came from our conviction on building this capability across the organization and not leaving it limited to only customer service people who typically are the front end to the customer. For us, we wanted to change the fabric, we wanted to enhance the fabric of the organization. And therefore, first of all, it's an organization value. So our annual assessments include for every employee on the value side, customer obsession is a value, and the self assessment and manager assessment are a part of that. So it is integrated, it is institutionalized as a practice. Number one. Number two, when we launched this initiative, we not only covered our policy issuance team, the underwriting team, the customer service team. I mean, those are some natural cohorts. We took this to the entire organization. While it was done with a lot more rigor for these cohorts that I just called out, because they are dealing with the customers day in, day out. But for the entire organization, we ran this program, and smaller modules where we took them through this. And then we didn't stop there. There was a reinforcement through managers, continuous nudges on this. And then there were measures and outcomes that we focused on, in terms of customer tat, customer satisfaction, customer touch points, the NPS scores. All of those were built in. So customer obsession, customer serving, customer orientation was the first one that we focused on the last few. The second one for us has been always the supervisor or the leadership capability. This is another one that we focused on. It was a strength, and in times to come, you see, for the organization to sustain the kind of growth momentum that we're experiencing, we don't want to be focused on a set of 5, 10, 20 individuals. This has to be org wide movement, and therefore continually having our supervisors play this, understand this, be more capable is going to be important. And we have grown very large, 400 plus branches today, all India. How do I ensure that the experience in Gurgaon is consistent, similar, if not same, as in Hooghly or Coimbatore? I mean, that's a big challenge of any fast growing organization. So that was the second part where we continue to focus. This has been our strength. We have been focusing on supervisor capability all the time.
John, from what you have seen across organizations, where do capability building efforts most often break down? Is it in design, leadership sponsorship, or reinforcement?
uh, of course, we need to start with the end in mind, right? Companies are not training colleges, right? They have a business to run and they have outcomes to achieve. So, what is the outcome that we want, right? And that's very important. And then, what is a business outcome, right? Are we looking at more, revenue per employee, right? Are we looking at more policies per employee, or are we looking at better productivity in terms of internal operating metrics, or are we looking at more qualitative outcomes? So there are various measures that you can have from a business perspective, right? And then you come backward to the behavioral shift that you need to make, how people need to change their approach, and then working backward to the design, right? So the design comes quite late in the stage, right? So I think first is that clarity. Second is obviously the quality of design. How does it drive reinforcement, drive outcomes? And then you tie it back to see whether the design actually is getting implemented, right? Because many times you have great designs on paper, but in practice things are very different. I think a lot of us need a mentor to tell us that ye karna hi hai, this has to be done, right? So leadership sponsorship is not just in terms of money, but the focus on the initiative, right? It's not just about the leaders saying that yes, let's do it, but also putting the weight behind the initiative and having multiple touch points with the participants on why there should be a change on the ground.
So how do you connect the two? Building capabilities and also building a culture. So how do you see that both the things complement each other and build the thing together? Because
To me, and sometimes I can be seen as someone who has a bias on culture, almost, to that extent, a positive bias on culture, because I feel I keep going back to the roots all the time. I feel a lot of answers lead me to Rome, which is culture in this case. um, uh, for example, and the reason for that is, it's very simple. Anything in its simplest form makes it very clear. For example, if we were a one shop, a one floor, a one building organization, the story is very different. Like many startups that we see today, it's very easy for them, because you rub shoulders with each other, you meet each other every day, you know how, what is okay, what is not okay. The moment you become, multiple buildings, and then you become multiple cities, and then you become, hundreds of branches and foreign branches, the real challenge is how do you ensure that consistency, that nuance, and that is consistent. What you think, I keep going back to the famous Rajiv Gandhi quote in the context of corruption in India: गांव में सिर्फ 15 पैसा पहुंचता है. If a bit like that in the case of culture, if it is not consciously anchored, you only have 15 paisa reaching the far flung branches and stations. And therefore, I keep going back to culture. How do I ensure that every new employee who comes into the organization understands how we work very well? And that answer keeps going back to culture. Culture is a very silent, subtle, but a powerful way, of really ensuring that everyone is aligned on the agenda in terms of how we work. If we leave it to chance, it won't happen. Actually, there is a famous, uh, GPTW quote that I often reminded of, which says, culture is like the, uh, you know, deputy CEO. It takes over when the CEO walks out of the room. So, I keep going back to that. Culture is like that. It's very powerful. It is there for us, and therefore, so now when we culture of learning, culture of growth, culture of raising the bar every day, culture of customer obsession, culture of pursuing excellence. The moment there is a ecosystem which absorbs this, understands this, believes in this, and actions it, then capabilities that we want to drive, like I just called out those two or three, makes it easier for, because every supervisor then, you see, ultimately for a supervisor, Prajjal, it is only, your span is what, 7, 8, 10 people. But for HR, it is 1 is to 400, and many organizations unfortunately delegate this. I don't use the word abandon this, even sometimes even abandon this to HR, that you should drive, culture issue. It doesn't work like that. You have, you're meeting your team every day, sitting with them, having reviews, meetings, going out with them on field visits, customers. You are best placed as supervisor. So that culture that we have created, and it comes natural, it makes it very, it's like a lubricant, very easy for a well-oiled machinery to run every time. Any new initiative we want to launch, it's very easy. We will naturally go to supervisors. It will be layer by layer. Each person has to do it for their team, then the next person will do it for their team, and so on, reaching the final leg in the organization. So actually it makes it easier when there is a deep, rich culture that enables capability identification and capability awareness and capability development. It actually really works like a lubricant from that perspective. Yes, and it sustains. The other important element of that is it sustains. Otherwise, things could be like a spark. Could be seasonal. We something has come with some new tech, something, and we like it. We talk about it. We get excited, and then it fritters away the next quarter or the next year. Culture ensures that doesn't happen. We do a few things and do them very well, and it sustains.
John, CHROs often face skepticism from business leaders around L&D ROI. How should HR leaders think about measuring capability impact differently so that the business truly sees the value?
So, in today's day and age, the beauty is that with AI, you are able to measure things far more granularly, right? For example, we have these 5 minute scenarios or 2 minute scenarios after which you can get a quick measure, a gauge, a score of how a user has performed, right? You can analyze people's conversation transcripts, and then you can know their tonality, their quality of conversations, their strength on a particular competency. So the amount of data you can get with AI now is far more richer, and it's much more easier to connect competence to outcomes. Right? So I think the job of CHROs today is much easier that way, in terms of being able to articulate ROI, because the tools and platforms of today are able to give you that data, which was not really so easy earlier.
Generally, what kind of capability building the insurance sector needs to do? Say uh, at the branch level, or you know there would be different set of employees. There would be one in the corporate sector, and there would be people at the branches who are actually going to the field and actually going to the market. So what kind of capability building is required for them, and that needs to be overall time to time.
Correct. I think, if you are familiar with the insurance sector typically has, in the teeth to tail ratio, the FLS is as a proportion, the front end salespeople. It's a very, very high proportion. It's more than almost 90% of most, life insurance, companies. And therefore, the most dominant, most uh, agents are, if I include agents, then this ratio, then it can be 95%. For example, in our context, yeah, if in our context, if we have, let's say, about 40,000 people, our sales team and sales associates, and then there are another 60, 70,000 agents on top of that. So I mean, that could be 95% plus if I include them also. Therefore, the most important, most dominant, just on the numbers itself, from a ratio perspective, is your ability to handle customers. So, customer handling, skills and abilities, and your selling skills, and therefore knowing business and its nuances, they become very, very pertinent. I mean, if a sales manager who is young is supposed to supervise an agent, he has to have these. He has to have the ability to supervise, first hire an agent, and therefore, you must know, and then work with the agent on, your customer handling, ensuring products, teaching product details, business nuances, and then be able to ensure that they are continually updated on all that is happening in the business from a business perspective. So, and then be able to go out on sales calls. Supervisors have to go out on sales calls. Sometimes, we start measuring, in many channels, for example, agency and all, we ask, and we actually measure as to how many calls a supervisor goes out on, especially in the initial 6 months. How many times has he or she, because the way he or she will do will be much different from a person, walking in the dark and discovering and finding out on his own. So primarily the most prominent skills would be, selling skills, customer handling, and product related and business related skills, so that you are, capable in the field, and you are able to, by the way, the insurance penetration, is just about 4% in India, 3 to 4%, which is much lower than the global standards, where it's much higher. And therefore, the while there is room to grow, there is significant potential for this to grow. But it's important that in India, because of lack of awareness, insurance selling, does not happen on its own. It's not a pull product, and therefore people have to be really capable to be able to explain as to why is this important, how will it help you in your later years of life, how does it give you the kind of security, etc., that you need. Those become very, very pertinent and important. So those are the primary, from a volume perspective, drivers that we focus on.
For HR and L&D leaders watching who may want to move from training programs to genuine capability transformation, what's that one practical piece of advice that you'd like to give, John?
I think some of the things we already discussed here, that how do we get leadership sponsorship, number one. Two, we need to know that a certain method or a tool can only do so much, right? But sometimes we get very carried away by the outcome that we want to drive, but the process to drive the outcome is not the right process, right? So each process or each tool, you can only shift, the needle so much, right? And we are talking about human behavior. We are talking about changing another person's mindset, skill set, tool set. There's only so much that you can do from the outset, right? Sometimes under SEBI there should be some change, right? So many times it's about, and you have to also bet on the right horses, right? The same intervention will have different impact on different people. So having a gauge on what are we investing in, on whom, and what outcome we are expecting. I think if that alignment is there, then I think a lot of these learning interventions see very, very good ROI, right? I think it's about getting all these pieces coming together. We are lucky to be just driving a very similar journey for Shailesh's team, right? But obviously it's confidential, so I can't talk a lot about that on this call. And I fully agree with Shailesh when he talks about how future readiness is a very big theme at Axis MF. We have really seen that as a partner to Axis MF as well, right? But I think journeys where we have seen, for example, there are journeys where there was a clear mandate to increase the premium per sales frontline, right? And there was a clear benchmarking done across brands, and there was a clear understanding that each brand, each insurance brand, where were they in that journey of weighted premium per salesperson, right? In 2016, in 2019, in 2022, what did that brand do to achieve that kind of premium? Is it feasible to get that kind of premium for this brand where the journey is being done, right? And what are the gaps? And therefore, what are the interventions required to improve that gap, right? So if you follow a little methodical approach, if you have that competitive reality also taken into account, right, then your likelihood of getting a better successful learning outcome goes up a lot, right? And then if you're not making, for example, we do have clients coming and saying, what, we want to do a one-day workshop, but we want to see a really big shift. It's not going to ever happen, right? There's only so much a one-day workshop can happen. It's a continuous journey. It's a mindset shift. So the design part of it, again, wherever you do 3, 4, 5 months journeys, you see a lot more outcome. Wherever you use digital intelligently, you can see outcomes from that, right? Because digital means that your investment of classroom and logistics goes down a lot. And today with AI, you are able to deliver very personalized solutions to learners, very immersive, very personalized solutions. Any simulation that we give to a learner today, you can tailor it to the power of one, right? For that person's context, for that person's stakeholders, for that person's challenges, you can actually give them simulations which replicate that. And they get very personalized feedback as well, that, okay, in this situation, this is how you spoke, this is how you approached it, and this is the personalized feedback that you're getting. And instead of saying this line like this, you could have changed the way you said this line, right? To sound more effective in that conversation. So this is like one example of a learning solution, right? So if you are able to do all this reasonably well, then ROI is something that's far easier to kind of achieve.
Okay, say suppose from an uh, from a particular branch, say in a remote area or in a particular district or area, you see there are a lot of customer complaints. I'm not talking in terms of say generating business or that branch is not delivering numbers, but there are a lot of customer complaints. You get. What are the measures that you take in terms as an HR?
So if we see turbulence in a particular pocket, and our radar picks up that, and it can pick up in many ways. First and foremost, there is a whistleblower process. People can use the whistleblower, and as CPO, I chair that committee. They can write to me anonymously. They don't have to declare their name. So we really want to pick these inputs early on. Number one. Number two, people can even otherwise write directly to any CXO CEO. There is a email ID to where this is directed, and the case is logged first, so that there is transparency. There are investigators assigned, and there is a team which has a which brings together all compliance teams, all fraud investigation, all investigations pertaining to day-to-day working in office, etc. They are all, ICC, all of those are part of that setup. So that once we investigate and find out, once it raised to us, we become aware, then we go into investigation mode to find out, is it frivolous, is it motivated, is it real? And the investigator will follow. They're all trained investigators, they're all trained. Every year there is a refresher also run for them. They will investigate. If they find substance, for example, then they will go deeper. People are given opportunities. They are interviewed at the branch at that location to share, and they can talk, they can withhold, they can be anonymous. Mails go out to them. Investigators visit the branch, collect more evidence, talk to them, and then further action. And by the way, once we have diagnosed and found out what went wrong, then thereafter we not just penalize the people who were involved or people who are messing up with company policies and practices. We actually ensure that the torch shines on the supervisor. We keep going back the supervisory protocol upwards, and we say, listen, we don't want people, and I'm sorry to use the word, but हमें धृतराष्ट्र नहीं चाहिए वहां पे जो बैठे हों, and whatever has to happen is happening. We insist that our supervisors have to be always aware, alert. And because it's not possible for HR or compliance from here to go to Hooghly or Coimbatore all the time, or Pune, we expect supervisors to be ambassadors of compliance, anchors of compliance all the time. So that's the kind of culture, and we run refreshers on people raising these issues again and again. Every year there are series of webinars that are run, and we invite all employees to understand, and we encourage them to report. So open reporting is an integral part of this, and thereafter a very comprehensive thorough investigation and follow through. And then we share these examples. We have about 300 television screens, large screens in the branches. So while we will not call out someone's name, but we call out that example. There are these examples that we run on the screens all the time. What we want to communicate to people, what went wrong, and why everyone needs to be diligent and alert that it doesn't happen in their branch or their location. So those examples, those learnings are shared through these branches. There are these on the screen rotating messages, key elements, that, and this is compliance is also a part of that constant communication. We feel communication is very vital to whatever we want to do from a culture standpoint, and therefore we deploy some of these. That's how we handle it.
Okay, and so suppose that was about the, if you find some compliance issues, but say suppose from a particular branch there are issues related to customer problems. Customer is not happy. It is he's or she is not being serviced well. You know, then what kind of measures do you take?
So I can talk about one which I think comes to my mind readily from the HR team. Um, and I have served GE earlier, and in GE, having a center of excellence 20 years back when I was there, I think was the done thing across organizations. So even in Axis Max Life, uh, in my early years here, must have been about 2014, 15, we attempted to build that capability. And all repetitive tasks that people were doing, so HR business partners, from talking to partners, to talking to candidates, to asking for, to take them through interviews, and then, their salary offer, negotiation, background check, all of that. Almost everyone was involved in everything. And we said, no, this is a waste of time. Why don't we bring synergy and form a COE? I'm talking about 2015. And we attempted. Now, so we moved some people from the existing teams, which were HR business partners, generalists, to the COE, hired a leader also. Unfortunately, while in concept it seemed absolutely okay, um, but we realized that that year when we had to hire, and hiring modules in sales is absolutely critical to meeting business requirements. So if we have to hire, let's say, 10,000 people a year, and if we hire only 9,000 or 8,000, it has a direct impact on business, because you need sales hands in insurance sales. It's a retail sale business. And then I suddenly found that I was on the mat, under pressure from the CEO and the CDO, the chief distribution officer, saying, I'm not getting my people. And I am asking the HR team. And then I found that, they said, we are trying, but, we're setting our processes, and, we are, I found that, they were sort of, either not getting the right kind of candidates. There are people sitting in Gujarat and trying to do that from, Delhi was creating a challenge, and they were not on top. So I had to myself, get involved there. And then, we had to call it off, actually. Frankly, uh, we thought it'll be good to cut our losses rather than continue to, walk down the path and meet a big accident. So we had to call it off, and we said, no, listen, we'll not do it now. It was not making sense. And we thought we will reflect on what caused this. So I'll share with you what caused this, because we went at it second time most recently, and we did it successfully after that. So the first time, the reason we didn't do it first, we moved people internally, and the managers typically let go of people who are not necessarily the best. So when they moved from their team to the COE, they some of them, they passed lemons, to be true. They didn't necessarily pass this transfer the best people. You need the best people, and you need people who think. You need thinkers in a COE. The excellence is the key word there, center of excellence. So the ability to conceptualize a new process and execute, and then digitize, those people were more, executing hands, at junior levels. And we made a mistake there, and I should have myself got even more deeper. I relied more on the leader to do it, and the leader didn't have adequate, weight to be able to carry. So there was one, headcount constraint they had. Second, the quality of people, I think. Third, the process, the thought leadership to stitch the process, etc. They didn't work well. But was the concept right? 100%. If I have to, talk to partners, why should 10 HRBPs be talking to them? There should be one or two people who will do a standard contract, and then you sign up with them and hold them accountable. You can negotiate, funnel all the business to them, negotiate a better rate. It makes sense. The concept was absolutely right. So we went at it second time, and this time, we did it better. We had our fair share of challenges even the second time. The new set of challenges that came up that we had not seen, but we fixed those. And then finally, we were able to, create a COE which is, working fine. By the way, the first time when we did it, the timing also was not right, because the growth in that year was very, very special and exponential. So you don't change horses in the middle of a game. I think one has to be wise enough to do that also. I don't think, we did it right, to choose a year where the growth is more balanced, modest, manageable, is a better timing than the time that we chose at that point of time. So those were some key learnings, and we fixed those, next time, and then it worked fine.
Thank you, Shailesh and John. This was a really engaging conversation. And thank you to everyone who tuned into the CHRO Playbook powered by enParadigm. We will be back soon with our next episode, so do keep an eye out for that. Until then, this is Prajjal Saha signing off. If you enjoyed this conversation, do follow HRKatha for more such discussions. And please don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter. Thank you.